Moving into a smaller home after years of living in a big one is a lot like switching from a roomy SUV to a tiny hatchback. Suddenly you're asking yourself, where do I put everything? And why do I own 5 frying pans? But here's the good news. A small home doesn't have to feel small. With the right little tricks, you can make your new space look open, airy, and surprisingly spacious, without knocking down walls or winning the lottery. In today's video, I want to walk you through some clever, practical, and honestly kind of fun design ideas that make a small home feel bigger. These aren't the usual tips like paint it white and hope for the best. These are real, lived-in solutions that make your home more comfortable, more functional, and a whole lot more enjoyable. So grab a cup of tea, sit back, and let's talk about how to make your downsized home look beautiful, smart, and spacious. Number 1. Choose furniture that works twice as hard. When you move into a smaller home, ordinary furniture just doesn't cut it anymore. A coffee table that only holds coffee? No. Now that coffee table had better store magazines, remote controls, extra blankets, and maybe even the TV manuals you keep just in case. In a small space, furniture has to behave more like staff than decoration. Every piece needs a job, preferably 2 or 3. Think of it like this. If the furniture is going to take up precious space, it needs to justify its existence. If it can't multitask, it's taking up valuable real estate. A bed with storage drawers underneath is a classic example. Why have a bed that just sits there like a diva laying in the middle of your room without contributing anything? Make it work. Make it hold your linens, winter sweaters, or that extra set of towels you absolutely refuse to part with. But do you know what helps you plan all this without losing your mind? A senior downsizing digital planner. It helps you map out furniture, storage, room layouts, and what stays or goes, so you don't end up with a sofa blocking a doorway and wondering where your life choices went wrong. The link is in the pinned comment if you want to check it out. And speaking of sofas, that's another great opportunity. In a large home, having a couch just for sitting is fine. But in a smaller home, maybe it folds out into a guest bed, or has hidden compartments for storage, or maybe it's shaped to fit a corner perfectly, giving you floor room you wouldn't otherwise have. Even side tables can do double duty. Instead of buying a little table that just holds a lamp, get one with a drawer, or one with shelves, or one that opens up. The key is thinking smarter, not bigger. When you choose furniture like this, something magical happens. Your home doesn't just feel tidier, it feels lighter, more efficient, more intentional. And suddenly, the space doesn't feel like it got smaller, you just got better at using it. 2. Put more on the walls, less on the floor. Here's something most people don't realize until they move into a smaller home. The floor is the most valuable square footage you have. If the floor starts getting cluttered with cabinets, baskets, shelves, lamps, storage tubs, and other stuff, then your home starts shrinking, visually and physically. So one of the best techniques in a small home is to stop thinking of the floor as your main storage area. Start thinking vertically. The walls are your best friends. They're free, they're wide open, and most of the time, they're underused. Instead of a big bookshelf taking up 3 feet of floor space, mount floating shelves. Instead of putting a standing lamp in the corner that you'll constantly bump into with your toe, put a wall-mounted light or sconce. Wall-mounted hooks can replace entire coat racks. A wall-mounted drop-leaf desk can become a full workspace without stealing any floor space when it's not in use. And here's the thing. When the walls start working, the room starts breathing. The sight lines open up. You can walk freely without doing the sideways shuffle just to squeeze past a table that sticks out too much. Even visually, a room with clearer floors looks bigger. The eye follows the floor uninterrupted, and suddenly the room looks wide and open. When you have too many things sitting on the ground, the room looks like it's wearing too many layers of clothing, tight, heavy, and stuffed. So if you want a home that feels bigger, don't just ask yourself, where can I put this? Instead, ask, does this really need to be on the floor? Because 9 times out of 10, the walls are waiting, smiling and saying, "Hey, give me something to do." 3. Use glass, acrylic, and transparent surfaces. Now this one is fun because it's about tricking the eye, like a little interior design magic show. In a small home, what makes a space look cramped isn't always the size of the room. It's how many things visually block your view. Picture a chunky wooden coffee table. It might be beautiful, but it sits there like a big solid roadblock in the middle of the room. Your eye hits it, stops, and the room suddenly feels smaller than it is. Heavy furniture has weight, not just physically, but visually. Now imagine that same table, but made of glass. Suddenly the floor is visible. Light travels through it. The eye keeps moving, and the room instantly looks larger, even if nothing else has changed. Transparent furniture isn't just decor, it's an illusionist. It creates the feel of space where there technically isn't any. A glass dining table is a big one. It can seat the same number of people, but it takes up half the visual weight. Acrylic chairs work the same way. They practically disappear into the room, giving you seating without adding clutter. Even things like clear shelves, glass consoles, or acrylic side tables give you function without stealing breathing room. It's the closest thing to adding space without remodeling. It's like saying, "I want that table, but I also don't want it to count against me." Some people worry that glass or acrylic may feel too modern or cold, but that's easy to fix with a warm rug, a wood frame on the wall, or soft linen curtains. In fact, blending transparent surfaces with cozy materials creates that perfect, inviting but spacious balance. And here's the beautiful part. Transparent furniture makes your space look like it has more open area than it realistically does. And after downsizing, that little illusion can go a long, long way. 4. Leave breathing room around your furniture. One of the biggest reasons small homes look cramped isn't the size of the home at all. It's how packed the room is with furniture. And I don't just mean how many pieces, but how close everything is squeezed together. When every chair touches something else, when every corner is filled, when every wall has something shoved against it, the room starts to feel like it's suffocating. A lot of people almost instinctively push furniture right up against the wall, thinking they're saving space, when in reality, it has the opposite effect. When everything is pressed flat against the edges, the room looks boxed in. The walls start closing in visually, and the room looks smaller, not bigger. Giving space between pieces, even just an inch or two, creates the illusion of space. Suddenly, the eye sees openings, pathways, and air. The room feels like it can exhale. It's the same reason a crowded restaurant feels tense, but a sparsely seated cafe feels relaxing. Breathing room changes how the space feels emotionally. Also, sometimes you just have to be brutally honest with yourself. If the room feels cramped, no matter how you rearrange it, it may mean one thing. You've got one piece of furniture too many. And getting rid of one thing can make a bigger difference than adding 3 new storage solutions. In a small home, fewer pieces with more space around them will always feel bigger, cleaner, and more peaceful than a room full of furniture where you have to side slide just to get to the couch. If you've ever had to turn sideways to squeeze past a dresser, that's the universe telling you, this piece is too big or too many. A room with breathing room looks bigger. More importantly, it feels bigger, and that's what really matters. 5. Use long drapes that hang higher than the window. Here's a tiny change that makes a massive difference, and best of all, it doesn't require remodeling, painting, or buying new furniture. Just moving your curtains. Most people hang curtains right at the top of the window frame. That's how we've been doing it for decades. But here's the trick interior designers swear by. Hang the curtain rod well above the window, 6, 8, even 10 inches higher if the wall allows it, and let the drapes fall all the way to the floor. What happens is pure visual magic. Your room suddenly looks taller, the windows look grander, the ceiling looks higher, and the whole room starts feeling more architecturally impressive, even if nothing structural changed. It's kind of like when someone wears pants that sit just right. It elongates the look. Short curtains that stop halfway or sit at window height tend to chop the wall visually, shrinking the perceived height of the room and making everything look more compressed. Long, tall curtains draw the eye upward, and in a small home, anything that pulls the eye vertically instead of horizontally instantly makes the room feel bigger. It gives the room a sense of elegance and spaciousness, like it suddenly got taller, even though the ceiling stayed exactly where it was this morning. Plus, longer drapes tend to soften the room. They add vertical softness and flow, and they also hide things like uneven window heights, older frames you can't renovate, or compact windows that look small in a space. One small change, huge visual payoff, and once you see it, you'll never go back to hanging curtains low again. 6. Use a light, unified color palette with pops of personality. Color plays tricks on the mind. In a big house, you can have bold, dark, high-contrast furniture, and the room can still feel wide open. But in a smaller home, too many competing colors make the room feel visually noisy. Instead of the eye gliding across the space smoothly, it keeps stopping and starting like a nervous driver at every red light. That's why a lighter, more unified color palette works wonders in a small home. It keeps the space feeling open and continuous. The light bounces around rather than getting absorbed, and the room feels brighter, calmer, and more expansive. Now, that doesn't mean everything has to be plain white. Unless you're going for hospital chic, you want warmth and personality. Soft neutrals, warm beige, dusty pastels, creams, light grays, all these tones create unity while still adding character. When the bigger, permanent things share similar tones, the walls, couches, rugs, large cabinets, the room looks more cohesive and visually spacious. The eye isn't being constantly halted by high-contrast changes. Once the foundation is unified, you can play. Add personality where it's easy to change. Cushions, throws, tableware, artwork, plants. Even a bold patterned rug if the rest of the room is toned down. This approach gives you the best of both worlds. Your space feels open and spacious, but also like you. Colorful, textured, warm, personal. It also prevents the home from feeling cluttered, even if you like having decorations. A dozen colorful objects in a neutral space still looks calm, but a dozen colorful objects on top of competing dark furniture in a painted red room looks like a carnival ride. Light tones give your space breathing room, just like spacing your furniture does physically. And then, those pops of personality become even more noticeable, meaningful, and beautiful because they're not fighting for attention. 7. Buy fewer, larger decorations, not lots of tiny ones. This is one of those things that feels backward at first. You'd think tiny decorations would make a room feel delicate and small home friendly. But in reality, a bunch of little objects scattered across shelves and tables tends to make the space feel cluttered and visually busy. Your eyes are constantly darting around, trying to register 20 little things at once. But when you choose fewer decorations that are larger and more substantial, something interesting happens. Instead of dozens of small pieces competing for attention, the room suddenly feels calmer and more intentional. A single large painting on the wall makes a much bigger statement than 7 small frames hung in a crooked cluster. One sculptural vase or centerpiece looks classy, while 10 tiny knickknacks start to look like a gift shop display. Larger decorative pieces also help anchor a space. They give you that sense of structure and style without overcrowding. Think of it like wearing one bold necklace instead of 7 beaded bracelets that clink every time you move. Both are fine, but one is more elegant and restful to look at. And here's the psychological part. Large items signal confidence in the space. They allow the room to breathe. They give your eyes somewhere to settle. In a small home, that's huge. A calm room feels bigger than a hectic one. So when decorating a smaller space, start thinking less in terms of quantity and more in terms of presence. Pick something you really love and let it have its moment, without burying it in a crowd of distractions. 8. Shift from horizontal storage to vertical storage. When space is limited, the instinct is often to spread out and fill every horizontal surface: tabletops, counters, sideboards, shelves, coffee tables, the top of the fridge, you name it. Before long, the entire home starts to feel like a flat plane of stuff, and that's when the space starts shrinking before your eyes. The magic happens when you stop thinking sideways and start thinking upward. Vertical storage is the small home's secret weapon. It takes advantage of something most people forget about: the walls and the height of the room. Even the smallest homes have more vertical space than they realize. Tall cabinets, stacked shelving, bookcases that go all the way up, wall-hung organizers, over-the-door storage. They let you store more without eating into walking area. And the beauty is, when you lift things off the floor suddenly reappears. Once you see more visible floor space, the room looks bigger instantly. Vertical storage also looks smarter and more modern. It gives the room a clean, organized feel, like the space has purpose and structure, and it keeps things accessible. Instead of stuffing extra blankets into a drawer you have to bend down to reach, you can store them on a shelf at eye level. Better for the body, better for the home. In small spaces, horizontal storage spreads your belongings across the house where you can see them. Vertical storage stacks them where your eyes move past them effortlessly. It's not just better use of space, it's better use of peace of mind. 9. Use lamps and lighting to open up dark pockets. Lighting is one of the most underrated tools in making a small home feel bigger. Most people rely on a single overhead light in each room and call it a day. But that leaves corners underlit and creates shadows that make the space feel smaller and boxed in. The human eye reads shadow as end of space. So the darker the corners, the smaller the room feels. The trick is to soften and widen the lighting throughout the room. Lamps, sconces, and under-cabinet lighting brighten those forgotten corners and edges. Suddenly the space looks more open and expansive. A lamp in the corner gives the impression that the room continues further than you thought. A strip of warm LED under kitchen cabinets removes heavy shadows and makes your countertop feel twice as big. Even a small table lamp on a shelf adds comfort and dimension. Lighting is emotional too. It affects mood. A well-lit room feels relaxing and cozy. A dim, unevenly lit room feels tight and slightly cave-like. In a small home, lighting is not just about seeing. It's about giving your home volume and presence. And because lamps sit up high and take little floor space, they don't crowd the room the way another piece of furniture might. A small investment in more light can make the space feel bigger, warmer, and more welcoming instantly. And once you soften those dark pockets, you'll wonder how you ever lived without the glow. 10. Keep surfaces clear, so your eyes have somewhere to rest. Here's one of the simplest yet most powerful changes you can make. Clear the surfaces. Not all of them, all the time, forever, but enough that when you walk into the room, your eyes have some space to breathe. When every table, counter, desk, and dresser is covered in objects: mail, photos, baskets, pens, lotion bottles, half-read books, coasters, receipts. The brain has to work overtime. Your subconscious is scanning, processing, and sorting before you've even sat down. It becomes visual noise. But a clear surface does the opposite. It calms the room. It gives the eye a place to rest. It creates a sense of openness and visual spaciousness. Even a small home can feel luxurious when the surfaces are clear. It's the same psychological effect you get when you walk into a nice hotel room. The surfaces are empty, clean, and intentional. It immediately feels relaxing, not because of the size of the room, but because of the feeling of mental space. When you start clearing surfaces, you might realize you don't actually need all the objects you are used to seeing every day. Or maybe you just needed better systems, trays, drawers, wall organizers, or that vertical storage we talked about earlier. Even clearing just one major surface, like the coffee table or the kitchen counter, can transform how the whole room feels. Suddenly the space looks more expensive, more polished, more adult in the best way. It signals care and presence. Your home begins to feel lighter, more intentional, and easier to live in. So there you go, 10 simple but powerful ways to make a smaller home feel bigger, brighter, and more comfortable. Downsizing doesn't have to feel like losing space. It can feel like gaining clarity, coziness, and a home that finally works for you instead of against you. And the best part? Most of these changes don't cost much. A little rearranging here, a new lamp there, maybe a curtain rod a few inches higher, and suddenly your space feels transformed. If you found these tips helpful, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with someone who just moved or is thinking about downsizing. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's your favorite trick for making a small space feel bigger? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.